Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, but more specifically, we're going to talk about the Bitcoin dominance. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Now, I want to provide some updates on my thoughts with regards to the Bitcoin dominance. This is something we've covered on the channel quite closely over the last couple of years, and I think it is a worthwhile metric to use in navigating the cryptoverse. Now, to provide you with sort of a brief overview of my general thoughts about the Bitcoin dominance, over the macro scale, I would contend there's a decent chance that it's in a downtrend, okay? With that said, I think in the short to medium term, it's much more likely that it breaks to the upside. This is what we saw happen in the last cycle, and I honestly see no reason why it won't play out in a somewhat similar manner, although the extent at which we go up will likely be somewhat tempered. I don't think the dominance, including stablecoins, is going to hit 70%, but it still certainly has a long way that it could go just to sort of reach what I would consider to be more normal levels for altcoin accumulation. Now, if you're not familiar with sort of the what we've talked about with respect to the Bitcoin dominance recently, remember there's two ways to look at it. We can look at it including stablecoins, and we can look at it excluding stablecoins. We can also talk about overarching trends in the Bitcoin dominance, and one of the things that we talked about and that we anticipated was that the dominance should find a pivot in September where it starts to move back the other direction. And if you go look at September, the first week of September, you can see that that's basically where the Bitcoin dominance decided to pivot and start moving in the other direction. We talked about this. You can see on August 3rd, we discussed the idea of Bitcoin dominance. It's funny because in this video, it was at 41.94%, and we talked about how it's likely going to continue going down into the Ethereum merge, right? Into the ETH merge, because there was a lot of hype around the ETH merge, and then it'll likely start to go back up. But what's interesting is if you look at this video, the dominance was just below 42%. The price of Bitcoin was 23K. Now the dominance is basically the same, right? It's just below 42%, but the price of Bitcoin is 19.3 or 19.4K. So the dominance is more or less the same, but the price of Bitcoin is lower. So therefore, if Bitcoin were to say continue moving higher in the short term, which is always a possibility, I mean, I still think that we're fighting macro headwinds and Bitcoin's not going anywhere for a while. But if we were to see some type of sideways consolidation for a while with Bitcoin, or maybe it moves up and down, $1,000 or $2,000, I do think you'll see the Bitcoin dominance continue to rise. So we talked about this in August, and we noted again that there was normally a pivot in the direction of the Bitcoin dominance in September. And it's not that it always has to start moving up in September. It just means that whatever direction it's going before September, it typically reverses course and goes the other way. Okay, we've seen this actually play out many, many times over the years. And you can also see if we look back at say 2021, you can see that's where the dominance sort of really shifted gears in September and going into Q4, and we went back up. So I'm still in the camp that in the short to medium term, the dominance is likely going to continue breaking higher. We also discussed this in September as well. Once we hit that point, once we went down to like that 39 to 40% level, we talked about the idea of actually getting some type of a bounce there. Now that it has bounced, I still stand by the statement. I think it will actually continue higher as altcoins continue to sort of bleed against Bitcoin. All right. This is exactly what played out in 2018, and I think we're seeing sort of glimmers of it playing out right now. You might be interested to know that part of this move with the Bitcoin dominance over here was not even accompanied by the price of Bitcoin doing much of anything interesting. In fact, if I let's overlay the price of Bitcoin on this chart, one of the things that you'll notice is that if I switch this also to a log scale, so it's a little bit more clear, you might notice that during this move up by the dominance of Bitcoin, it also corresponded to sort of Bitcoin just going sideways for a while and putting in lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, and then eventually we broke down. Okay, you might notice that. And then if you go back over here, you could argue the same thing, right? Like the dominance is starting to slowly break higher, but it's not breaking higher because Bitcoin is doing anything that remarkable. It's breaking higher because Bitcoin's also sort of just putting in these lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. And I think some people are starting to, to get cold feet about whether the bottom is actually in for Bitcoin. Okay, this is obviously the most pressing question on a lot of people's mind is, well, if the bottom's not in, then alts have further to fall. Or you could look at it like the Fed is continuing to raise interest rates, therefore it will likely continue to put downward pressure on risk assets. Or you could look at it like, there's likely going to be some regulation FUD for the altcoin market in the short term. Okay, now a lot of people I see in the comments, they don't like it that I'm bullish on the dominance, but I'll tell you this. If you want to see me get bullish on altcoins again, then I want to see this go up, right? Once this goes up, then I get bullish on altcoins again, and then I'll be more interested in the altcoin market, and I'll start talking about the altcoin market again. But it's just hard in my own, in my opinion, to be bullish on altcoins when you see the dominance of Bitcoin at really historic lows. And normally, when we get down to these historic lows, it ultimately resolves back up to the upside. Okay, so I think this is something to consider. The dominance right now is coming in just less than 42%. Now, what's interesting is I also wanted to take a moment to talk about the Ethereum dominance as well. I'll probably make another video about this too. But if we overlay it, it is sort of playing out in a somewhat similar manner. Let me actually switch this to a new scale and we talked about the idea of Bitcoin's dominance bottoming at the same time that Ethereum's dominance hits a sort of another top. Same idea, sort of same type of move that it did back over here in 2018. I mean, it did go a little bit higher, but still somewhat similar of a move where the Ethereum dominance sort of bottoms, puts in one last hurrah, and then it comes down. And at the same time that the Ethereum dominance bottoms, Bitcoin dominance tops. And then when the Ethereum dominance tops here, that's where the Bitcoin dominance bottoms and then goes on its run while the Ethereum dominance comes back down. And then we're sort of looking at, I think, the same type of thing, right? The Ethereum dominance topping after it hit this bottom, which is where the Bitcoin dominance topped. Now the Ethereum dominance is topping over here, the Bitcoin dominance bottom. And I think it's going to start to head back up the other way. So this is something we've talked about for quite a long period of time. I've said relentlessly throughout this year that that the altcoin market will remain under a significant amount of pressure. And if you really take a look, I mean, a lot of altcoins are down significantly against Bitcoin. Okay, over the last 6 to 12 months. I mean, Ethereum is probably holding up about as good as most of them. But it's basically, I mean, you could argue it's basically just gone sideways for the last almost year and a half. But this is probably one of the ones that's holding up the best. A lot of the other ones are just simply not. I mean, if you look at, say, like ADA Bitcoin, it's really starting to roll over here. If you overlay, say, like the bull market support band, you can see it's now fallen below that. If you look at Bitcoin, you see the same thing, right? A clear rejection off the 20-week SMA. Link Bitcoin is holding up somewhat okay, but still, I'm guessing if this is the bottom on Link Bitcoin, it still will continue to sort of just not go too far in any one direction in the short term. And then you could go down the list, right? You could look at Uni Bitcoin, which, I mean, it is currently holding above the 20-week SMA, but look how far it's fallen. I mean, look how far it's fallen since May of 2021. And since January of 2022, it's still down from around 4,200 Satoshis down to around 3,100 Satoshis. Litecoin's Bitcoin valuation, as per usual, continues to be in a very macro downtrend. So nothing too different there. Maker Bitcoin still, it still is, I would argue, in a downtrend. It has moved up a little bit recently. Theta Bitcoin, you're just continuing sort of on. A lot of these altcoins are just in these macro downtrends against Bitcoin right now. BNB Bitcoin is one of the ones that has held up amongst the best, but arguably, we also saw something similar in sort of mid 2018 where it had this rally out of its sort of sideways channel, only to come back into it and eventually capitulate below it. So you might see something like that play out again. I'm not super bullish here on the BNB Bitcoin valuation. I do think it will come down as well. If you look at, say, like Aave Bitcoin, it's holding right around the 20-week SMA right now, but again, over the last year and a half or so, it's down quite a lot, actually. I mean, it's down from this high here, it's down about 76% or so. Solana Bitcoin continues to sort of roll over underneath the bull market support band in the downtrend channel. Avalanche Bitcoin, same type of thing, right? If I can click on it, still clear rejection by the bull market support band. No clear signs of breaking back up to the upside. So I think all of this, in my mind, all of this points to Bitcoin's dominance ultimately heading higher. Right now, Bitcoin's price against the US dollar is actually showing a little bit of strength coming off the prior low today that corresponded with the CPI report. Remember, daily moves are more or less a random walk. It's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. Over sort of longer time frames, it becomes maybe a bit easier to predict, especially, thinking that this year has just going to been, will just be bearish for the most part and that cash remains king. I think that's ultimately going to pan out as being true. And one thing maybe we should look at, I guess, is sort of like the bull market support band for Bitcoin, because it is coming down relatively quickly. It currently ranges from around 21.6 to 23.5. So, I mean, if we were to rally back up to that level, that would be the key area to break. And note that if we were to rally back up, I think the dominance would go up with it. If Bitcoin just sort of goes sideways for a few weeks, kind of like it did over here back in, in say like October, you can see that October, November timeframe, Bitcoin's price got relatively stagnant. I know everyone's really excited about the price today, but I mean, look at it, right? Like, this is what you're excited about. Not a huge move in the grand scheme of things, just to put it in perspective. But if Bitcoin sort of just goes sideways down here as we wait for the 20-week SMA to come down, then I do think there is a good chance that during that phase, even if Bitcoin's price doesn't go up or down, that the dominance of Bitcoin will trend higher. One of the things you may notice is that a lot of these altcoins have put in lower lows on their USD pairs, or they've retested their prior lows, but they haven't actually regained from where they were a couple days ago. They're still at lower valuations, whereas Bitcoin has actually bounced back up. So you can sort of see some of these altcoins are really starting to show a lot of weakness here, not only against their Bitcoin pairs, but also against their USD pairs. That's not to say they can't be dragged up by the entire market if Bitcoin USD continues to go higher. But imagine what happens if Bitcoin goes higher, the dominance goes up, and then Bitcoin corrects back down to the same level. Like, imagine if it does something like this and then it comes right back down to the same level. That's where you really see altcoins, their alt Bitcoin valuations get crushed, and that's what we looked at and saw happen back in 2018. The other way that we can look at the dominance is to not only look at it against or including stablecoins, but we can also look at it without. So this chart shows it with stablecoins, and with stablecoins, you can see that we basically keep going down to the same level and sort of bouncing off of it. But if you exclude stablecoins from the calculation of the Bitcoin dominance, it's just been putting in higher lows, right? I mean, you could even look at this low, a higher low here, and then a higher low in May of 2021, and then again in December of 2021, and then again in September of 2022. But it's also putting in lower highs. So you can see a lower high, several lower highs, and then we continue on. This is sort of like a double top. It went slightly higher, and then potentially we will see another lower high in 2023, where I don't think the dominance excluding stablecoins is going to go all the way to say like 72 or 73%. I don't think it'll go that high, but it certainly has room to run past 50 and maybe up to like that 60% level. And maybe even a little bit higher when you exclude stablecoins from the calculation. If you include stablecoins in the calculation, I could see the dominance getting up much higher, like well over 50%, maybe 60%. But if it is to hit 60%, I don't think that would occur in the bear market. I think it would occur in, say, the beginning stages of a future bull market. If you actually go back and look at, say, the dominance of Bitcoin during the last bull market or during the last cycle, the first move up here in the Bitcoin dominance occurred during the bear market, but this move over here occurred during the 2019 sort of mini bull market. So, I mean, the dominance in the bear market sort of topped out at 62.5%, but when we had that 2019 move, it went all the way up to 60 or 73%. So that's something to consider as well, is that the dominance can go up at the end of the bear market, but it can also go up in the early stages and maybe even the middle stages of a bull market. You can kind of see that over here where it went up. We had sort of a pullback, and then it went up again for its parabolic rally on the Bitcoin USD pair, and then it came back down. So what I'm looking for is I'm ultimately looking for a break of the dominance back up to the upside, and then at this point I might start to get much more interested in the altcoin market in terms of sort of preparing for the next market cycle. I think that hopefully that makes sense. I mean, again, I completely understand that a lot of people don't agree with me that the dominance is going to head higher, and I completely get it. I actually had the same exact opinion in 2018, so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna stand and say no, because there's always a chance I could be wrong on this, and I have been wrong about it in 2018 when it moved up as quickly as it did, because I was actually buying altcoins over here in Q3 of 2018, and then I saw the dominance shoot up like crazy, and then all of my alts got completely wrecked on their Bitcoin pairs. So that's why I remain relatively cautious now. And if this does break up to the upside and alts get wrecked on their Bitcoin pairs, then that should provide a fairly attractive opportunity to accumulate altcoins in preparation for a future bull market. So we'll see how this ultimately resolves itself. Again, as you guys know, I still do remain bullish on Bitcoin's dominance as we continue to press on in Q4. We'll see where we end up by the end of the year and then try to provide an outlook for 2023. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do so. And also remember to give the video a thumbs up. We also do have Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. You'll be able to access these types of charts where you can switch between no stable coins and including stable coins if you want. And we can actually even overlay a moving average if you want to. And you can even see here how the dominance is slowly moving higher, right? Like we are putting in higher lows. It's just taking a really long time for this thing to really make its move. But it's taken a long time in prior cycles as well. It has taken longer in this one, but also we did have a double peak cycle. So had this just been a single peak cycle, I imagine this would have already resolved to the upside, but we had a double peak cycle, so it is in fact taking a bit longer than perhaps it otherwise would have. Remember, subscribe if you're not subscribed, give the video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.